So, hi everybody. My name is Dan Aukus. I'm going to be teaching this course, which is called Dynamic Site Generation with Markdown and Django. And so, just to kind of start off, I wanted to make sure that you guys know that this course is being recorded. It's going to be used to be able to share this video with our asynchronous students who aren't able to all join live. So if you don't want to be recorded, or if you don't want your video recorded or audio recorded, this is the time to let me know. Clement, you're okay with your voice being recorded?
Yeah.
Okay. And Daphne, video and voice is fine with you? Okay. I'll try and remind myself to ask you every lecture, just in case that changes. But just keep me up to date if something changes. But it really helps me because your participation makes it possible for me to have a little bit more genuine and authentic interaction, and I can tune the course to match your needs if I know how you're feeling and what questions you have. So it'll help me improve the course later. So I really appreciate it. So let's do brief introductions. So first I'll introduce myself. My name is Daniel M. Aukus, PhD, but you can call me Dan. In terms of academics, I have a BS in mechanical engineering from Northwestern University and a master's and PhD in mechanical engineering from Stanford. In terms of industry, I have some industry experience both before and after grad school and academia. Currently, I have started Backpack Engineering, which is where we are right now. You're currently on backpack.danaukus.com, but I expect that we'll be changing that over the course of over the summer. And I plan on using it to do education, technical, and mentoring and consulting. And so this is just the thing that I've started post academia. I'm also helping as the CTO for Syncside Billboards. And so I'm helping them with some hardware improvements and upgrades. And that's another thing that's on my plate. And finally, before academia, I was also an engineer with a company that did engineering consulting in Chicago called DMC, a great company. I also have some academic experience for the past, I was a postdoctoral researcher and tech dev fellow at Harvard University. And for the past 10 years, I was also a professor, and I left in December 2025 as a tenured professor. And I left to start this. So that's me. So as a professor, I also had some research experience, which I hope will help me in teaching further classes. I'll briefly just kind of show these on the screen around robotic design, prototyping, manufacturing. And I hope to add some classes to Backpack soon about those. On the teaching side, I've also taught engineering courses related to what I hope to do in the future, including foldable robotics, experimentation and deployment of robotic systems, embedded systems, design 1 and 2. I'm going to be teaching a course that's sort of related to that later in the summer, which you should hear an announcement about, as well as other courses like product design. So I'd like to hear a little bit about you. You can keep it simple. Just name, your background, and one thing that's fun about yourself. So if you don't mind, Daphne, would you like to go first?
Thanks, Dan. My name is Daphne, and I have a background in economics from the University of Chicago, if you want to go way back, but more relevant to this, to my interest in this course, I am in the wine industry. I run a wine club currently on Shopify, and I used to run a wine blog on Substack, but I have since migrated off of Substack, and that is really what piqued my curiosity about Django and Markdown, is being able to control the foundation of my business myself. And so since I had to go through that Substack migration, in case I ever have to do that again for Shopify, that's why I'm on here, to learn. And one fun thing about myself, I am a endurance athlete, and I like to do very silly long races.
And Clement?
Yeah, my name's Clemente, and I know nothing about Django, and look forward to learning about it. I like coding a lot, vibe coding a lot with Python, and I think it's a good opportunity to grow and learn about Django. And I'm always tinkering with technology and new languages, etc. And a fun fact about me is I love open source technology and Linux and all kinds of free open source technology is what I like to spend time on.
Great. Well, you're going to love this course because everything is built on open source and free stuff. So
Beautiful.
I hope you can get something out of it. So let me switch gears and talk a little bit about the course itself. So the name of the course is, it really is, spells out the goal here. So dynamic site generation in Markdown and Django. So I just want to talk a little bit about those words because I picked them very intentionally. So first, dynamic site generation, for that to mean anything, you have to know what static site generators are. So what are they? Static site generators are basically programs, usually open source programs, that allow you to generate HTML-based websites quickly and safely. And the reason why I say safe is that dynamic servers that serve pages, often have vulnerabilities, security issues that you only find out about later, that eventually, if you don't patch them, fix them, keep them up to date, will cause your site to crash. Static site generators, on the other hand, really are, their only function is to create HTML pages, and then you can use them, you can serve them on a much simpler file server style website, which means that there's a lot less interaction that can be broken on the server side. So they've kind of taken hold in a lot of different contexts. There are many different examples of static site generators: Jekyll, Hugo, MKDocs. And then the last one here, Pandoc, is not quite a static site generator, but it's used to convert Markdown to any number of file formats. So I kind of listed it there as another, program in the same ecosystem. So these programs are really good at that one function. But for me, what I found was that I migrated from Jekyll to Hugo to MKDocs using Pandoc along the way. And I found that these programs actually ultimately limited me in the functions that I was trying to do. For example, my personal website that I was building, I wanted to eventually be able to provide a different experience for someone who's logged on versus someone who's not. I wanted to take what I learned on that personal website and apply it to Backpack, which definitely has different functions based on if you're signed in or not, or if you're part of a class or not. So static site generators are great for simple websites, but they're not really great when you actually need that function. But the cool thing about them is that they allow you, and they're built around this concept of Markdown. And so Markdown is really the reason why I picked static site generators in the first place. What it comes down to is Markdown is just a file format. It's not even a file format with an extension. It's just a text file that's human readable. You write it in a very standardized way. And the reason why is because it allows you to just focus on writing. It splits the style of the website or the document that you're creating from the content. And if you're like me, I have found that I like to twiddle with bold, italics, font size, font until I get everything perfect. And I usually do that when I don't want to do the writing work. And so by switching to static site generators and Pandoc and all this paradigm that includes Markdown, it's actually allowed me to focus better on writing. And so really, static site generators were an entryway into this approach to writing. And they're, most static site generators are built around Markdown-based content. I will say that Markdown isn't just set around website generation, though. You can use it to generate PDFs through LaTeX, or you can use it to create Word documents or PowerPoint presentations. Even this presentation that you're watching right now was actually composed with a Markdown text file and then rendered. So I use it for all of my stuff. I've used it for textbooks and websites and presentations. So it's an important part of my workflow, and so I needed a tool that could render it with more functionality than a static site generator. Do you guys use Markdown at all in your day-to-day work?
No, I've never used it.
Okay, but you use LLMs, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of time, the output from an LLM is actually in Markdown. If you were to take that to a static site generator, it would render it beautifully with bold, italics, and it would look really nice. So oftentimes, modern day LLMs are actually, they have a Markdown generator as part of their output and input processing. They know they can speak it. And so it's actually a really good writing format to understand, because once you see it, you recognize it very quickly. It's very human readable. You don't need to write in Markdown, but suddenly the output of a LLM could be rendered very beautifully. So that's something to think about. And then finally, Django. What is Django? So Django is a Python-based web framework. A web framework is simply just kind of a solution surrounding the actual process of serving a website. It's based on Python, which is a programming language that I use as a technical person in engineering all the time. And so I picked it because it's building off of this knowledge that I know, but also Python itself is a really easy to learn language that comes with a lot of packages. So Django for me was a natural extension. And I think for this course, if you are technically minded, you might have had some experience with Python already that makes it easier for you to pick up one new thing like Django. Now, Django itself is over 20 years old. It's very well documented. There's a big community. It's been through many, many revisions. And there's some downsides and upsides to that because there's such a history. There are old solutions that may not apply anymore, but it works very well. There's a lot of support from the community, and there are probably better books and classes, better meaning more technically deep. But what I would say is the way I'm going to be teaching this is I'm going to be teaching it from the perspective of a relative novice. And I hope that my explanations can relate to your experience better than someone who's an expert already at it. So I think that there's a benefit to following along with someone who's learned it. But it doesn't have Markdown support built in. So there's some work to do before we can use these two things together. So maybe briefly I could hear, and you told me a little bit already about your goals, but could you stop and tell me what is your goal for taking this course so that I can hopefully tune it better for your needs along the way?
Well, my goal is really just learning a new platform to build websites. It's always welcome.
Okay.
I second that as well. And I think, from my point of view, it would be how would using Django and Markdown be better than using a platform like Shopify or Substack, etc.? Like, how would it give me that sort of freedom?
Okay. Cool. So I was going to take a break here and actually show you how this course is laid out through kind of a visual walkthrough of how a website built in Django is going to start looking like and end looking like at the beginning and end of this course. So anyways, as I was saying, let's walk through the website that would be generated from this course, right? And so this is what we will do to begin with. We are going to create a Django app or project and then app, and then put one page in it that renders. It's an index.html, just plain template with nothing in it. And this just shows that it's working. And right now on the right side of my screen, you can see that it's actually serving this page with a kind of a demo server that ships alongside Django. And the project structure is actually quite empty, right? There's nothing in it. The very first thing we're going to do after we install all the packages that we need to be able to run Django and develop on our own laptops, after we create this project, is we're going to integrate Markdown into the structure of this Django project. And so if you just bear with me, I'm going to go through this process of moving to my first, it's called a MVP, this minimum viable prototype that we're going to generate first, which just shows how to merge the functionality of Markdown and Django together. So the first thing we have to do, and I will go through this in much better detail later, and we'll only have to do this once or twice in here, because every time you change the structure of your code, you're actually changing the structure of the underlying database, and you need to reflect that in your in some commands here. So I'm just migrating my structure, my database structure, and now I'm going to run it again. And now let's take a look. Nothing much has changed, but we have a list of posts. There are no posts in this blog. Okay, so the idea of a post, I'm just going to make a new tab, and I'm going to go to the admin site. One of the real big benefits of Django is, that it comes and it ships with user management and group management and this administrative backend already built and built in for you. You can use it to add and create content, remove things from your database without having to know anything about databases. And for me, not being an expert at databases, this is a real powerful reason to use Django. So you can see that from the original site, which had nothing here, we've now created two elements called posts and tags. So I'm going to make my first post really quick. Here is a title. I'm going to select the author. It's me. There's a list of tags, but it's empty. So I'm going to create my first tag, courses. Now we've selected the courses tag, and I'm going to put in some Markdown content directly in here. So here is a title. Here is some body text. Here is a link, and I'm going to put the link in Markdown notation for a link, https://cnn.com, but the link is going to be in a bullet point. And let's just render this by saving it, and then we go back to the page here. So now here's a title. It's a title in our post. We click on it, and we've rendered that page from Markdown to HTML automatically. And so that is the very first prototype that we're going to be getting working in the course. And you can see the link also sends me out to CNN, right? So this shows that this concept is possible and that it's actually relatively straightforward to add this functionality. And I got this working in January of this year. And for me, that was very transformative because it meant, oh, this is actually a relatively easy lift. If I can install Django and get it working, I add a little bit of code, and suddenly all of my posts that I've already created and would like to, make more functional, I can bring in. So on the left, this is the very first site. I'm going to skip ahead a couple phases in the development. Really, the cool thing here on the right, you see that all of the versions of my code represent different phases in the development cycle. From this, very first empty project to phase one, the minimum viable prototype. And I'm going to just start going down the phases. I'm going to pause for a second, the server, and migrate again, because we've added some new content. And rerun it. We've added some new, not content, we've added some new data structures inside. So if I were to go back and rerun this, so now we have posts, folders, and notebook, and there's nothing in the notebook yet. This represents a structure, a folder structure that I haven't imported yet. So if I were to go back to my admin site, you'd see now we have a new data type called folders. So one of the goals for me was to just take all of the things that I'd already written that's in a folder structure on my computer and import it without having to organize posts on my website and posts in my folder structure separately. I don't want to do that. Everything's already organized with a parent-child relationship in a folder on my computer. Why can't I use that structure just natively? And if I want to move something, I just move it on my file structure on my computer, and it moves on my website. So that next step is this import-export feature. I'm just going to pause for a second, pause the server, and do python manage.py import markdown, you can see what it's going to do is it's going to import all the files on my computer that are in the file structure of my website. It updated, added 519 new posts. It removed the one post that I just created because it doesn't exist in the file folder structure. And now if I rerun it, we can see, first of all, the list of posts is now populated with all the files in my folder structure. If you go to the list of folders, you can see the folders that are underneath the main level directory that I started with. And if I were to click on any one of these, you'd have the list of posts beneath it. And finally, Notebook is a specific folder that I wanted to highlight and put in my top menu. And now it exists. Now I've linked straight to that Notebook folder, which is where most of my notes to myself go. And that's a function that I wanted to add. And I'll show you guys how to do it. You can also see when you're in a subfolder, the subfolder shows up also at the top too. So you have some navigation. So these next phases are really about making import possible and functional and usable for you on your website. So then I'm just going to bump ahead two phases and talk about style and formatting. I'm not changing the structure of this at all. In the first couple phases of our development, we've already established exactly the structure of our databases and models we want. Now we want to make it look pretty. And so we'll talk a little bit about CSS, theming, and how to change the templates in Django to make it look better. And so I'm going to just reload that same file or that same page. Suddenly it looks nice, but it's the exact same content, same material. What are some critiques? I'm in this subfolder and it just scrolls forever. I mean, there's tons of stuff. If I go up to the all posts list, I mean, it's quite long and it goes forever and it takes a while to load. So the next step in the development cycle, if we go to phase 1.5, TOC and pagination, is if I reload this page, you can see I've added pagination, meaning I can click through individual pages. So I don't have to wade through 512 individual posts that are all rendered all at once. And if you go into a single post, you can see the table of contents is also generated now. So within a post, you can see the contents of your post that have been summarized and put into a table of contents according to the hierarchy of headings that you used in your text file. So it just renders that automatically. So this kind of represents a very functional, usable site. And now some of these other steps are just adding functions one lecture at a time, one chapter at a time if this was a textbook. So the next step is adding date functionality. You can see that right now I already have dates, but if I were to reload this, how can I use that to understand what's here? So I can go to my main site and I can see that I have now an archive functionality. So any month that has a post in it, I list it and I can click on it and I can find all the posts that are listed for that month. So that's just another way that you expect, if you're using a static site generator, to be able to navigate around a blog. So I'm going to go to one more post or phase 1.7 tags. Suddenly, if I reload this, you can see we have a tags menu. So I can click through here and I can see all the different tags that are used in all the different pages. And I could click into one of them, let's say Linux. And you can see that there are a bunch of pages and they all have a tag called Linux somewhere in their content. And so now in terms of the functionality you would expect in a blog, we're just starting to add these features one at a time. And it's actually a relatively easy lift. But in each of these lectures, you're also going to be learning, okay, when I add this feature for tags, how do I add a database query in Django to allow me to search for all these files that have a tag in them that matches the tag I want, and to collect them together and to serve them into a page. And so each chapter, you're going to be learning some Django topics that are very specific to the goal that we have, whether it's finding all the things that match a date, finding all the things that match a tag, or adding search. So like, for example, in the next phase, you just add search. And so if I refresh this page, suddenly there's a search bar. I can search for Linux instead of finding a post that has a tag of Linux. And so these are the basic functions that I added to my website. There are certainly others, especially regarding styling, that we could add depending on what you guys want to do. But that will take a little bit of time, and office hours would be a good time for that. Then the final step, and we can see it here, but I'm not going to run it because it actually requires me to shut down the server and then move it to a separate host, is how do you move this site, which is currently showing up on my development computer, and host it on your own domain on an external virtual private server that you control and that allows you to kind of keep your personal computer from being, attacked by external, people who want to bring your site down. And so the whole point here is, how do you migrate from a web page that is on your computer to a web page that's on the internet that anyone can see, that's relatively robust and secure? And there are a bunch of changes that you have to make to the settings and to the configuration to make that happen. We're going to do that in Docker, and we're going to do that on a virtual private server that I've paid for myself. And I recommend at that point, and I mentioned this later in the lecture, that you might want to do that too. Generally, we're talking $5 a month for the cheapest server, and you don't need anything more than that for a site like this. So it's a nice thing to do so that you can learn the full process, but it's not required for the course. Okay, so that's a walkthrough of all of the features that we're going to go through in the course. And I wanted to just stop and ask if you had any questions about, or maybe not questions. What was the thing that was most exciting to you about what we just saw? Clement.
I think I have a question, actually.
Yeah.
I build pages in WordPress, and
Yeah.
I know the security can be an issue.
Yep.
And I also code pages with Vibe code pages every time with a Codex or Antigravity or whatever, and that makes HTML frameworks. My question would be, what would make a Django page superior to any one of those?
WordPress I've used before. I've also used, seen sites built in PHP or MySQL. They all have their potential to be hacked, right? I think the thing that I really like about Django is that because it's such it's both a very modern, very well used around the internet product, but it's also very old, meaning it's had time to build a really big development base. I think what I really like is A, because it's open source, B, because it's so well used and loved. Like, the development community is, I'd say, maybe larger than WordPress, even if the use of it is less than WordPress. I know WordPress is the dinosaur in the room for, or the elephant in the room for usage. But I would say in terms of hardening, it's just had so many eyes on it that the best practices are very well known.
That makes sense. So security is the number one. I mean,
it's built with user authentication built in, as we saw on the admin side, and very clear approaches to like locking down any data that you want. Anyone who's like coding these things by hand, and you're still like restricting access at a very granular level, can make a mistake, but it's built so that you don't have to. So it's a nice blend of a lot of the batteries are included already, but when you really want to do something very deep, you can do it very easily. So, it kind of blends high level, easy setup with very low level access if you need it.
Makes sense.
Just
makes sense.
Yeah.
And is there something comparable to plugins in WordPress that are made to?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. So just like the core Django And just like Python, just like WordPress, it comes with a huge ecosystem of extensions and middleware and third-party plugins that you can add that also themselves have very big user bases that have been vetted, that are open source. So you don't have to develop everything from scratch. There's a lot of very well-used third-party add-ons, especially plugins for payment processing, for asynchronous usage, for email sending, for connections to maybe commercial products. The vendors supply their own plugins for Django since it's so well used.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to. So I went through the kind of progression of the website. The course itself is laid out in 3 parts. The first one is just getting Django working and installed, and that minimum viable prototype working. That takes a bit of time, and getting Python installed, getting your system set up will, takes disproportionately a lot of time for any of these things. So that'll take the first third of our effort probably. Especially getting to that MVP where you're merging Markdown and Django together. I want you to be able to understand what it is you're putting together. And so we'll spend some time on that. Quick question, who is coming with a Linux computer? You can raise your hand with the little hand raise button, or you can just tell me. Okay. And Daphne, what will you be using?
I have a Mac.
Okay, so that's great. We have another cohort of people who's also taking this class, and we have a couple Windows folks. And so I hope to provide a very unified experience. I actually think the Mac is going to be the least unified, because my recommendation for the Windows users is either to use VirtualBox or a virtual machine with Linux installed, so it's basically the exact same experience, or Windows subsystem for Linux with Ubuntu installed. So for you, Daphne, if you follow along, I don't have a lot of explicit examples laid out in the text, but I will help you find the right modification you need to make to the commands to get it set up and working for you. All right, so that's the first part of the course. The second part is this chapter by chapter or lecture by lecture progression of features that I kind of clued into, where we start with the minimum viable product, Markdown, kludged together with Django, and slowly we'll add these features and learn a bit about Django, Python, databases, and everything along the way. And then finally, the third part of this course is really taking what you've built and then posting it on an external website, which also we have to stop, talk about some of these concepts and make sure that you're doing things the right way, because once it touches the internet, it can be easily broken if you haven't thought about all these things in the design of it. So I am not an expert. I'm a novice at doing these things, but I've also had my site running nonstop for a couple months without it being taken down. And I've learned some things, so I can help with that too. The other cool, superpower of this course is that what I just showed you, even though I haven't shared it with you yet, is all available on GitHub. And you can follow the course simply by following the code as it changes from version to version. You don't have to type everything yourself. You can follow along, listen, watch, but you don't have to type. You can, and I recommend it because it helps you get that muscle memory. But if it's going too fast, if you just want to skip ahead to the next version, you can, and you just get that next snapshot of the code. They're all different branches, and suddenly you have caught up. And so I think you can kind of use that format for the repository and that code that's shared to avoid any user error that you might experience as being a first-time user, which I had, but I hope that it'll be a much more seamless experience because of that. So that's a real big benefit of this. So we've already walked through all of these, and so this is just a reminder to me to mention it, so I won't go into it. I guess the only other function that I didn't mention here is adding this concept of pages. So far, we've talked about posts as being units where you see the post, you write one file and you put it on a folder, and then you import it, and suddenly it's visible on this website. My front page is not a post because it collects all these different posts from different places on my website, things that I want to bubble up to the top. And you might want to also have that feature as well. So that's one other feature that I didn't mention that we'll also go through. I'm going to skip most. If you want to see what the key learning objectives are, they're all listed on the lecture notes, which you can find in the course on the website, on Backpack website. But I will just mention a couple that I think are the most important. I think, the value of this course is that as a novice to Django, which I expect most of you are, you're going to understand the basics of Django and how it's used to build web applications. You'll understand what are the basic steps for installing and getting it configured and ready to go. It's a really important skill to just be set up and ready to start working, and you'll have that skill banked. There are 4 pieces of Django, and I list 3 of them here, and I'll kind of talk about all 4 of them throughout the course, but you'll understand the basics of what models are. Models are basically the data storage representation, how Django interacts with databases. And so if you're familiar with Python and this object-oriented method of programming, it does the heavy lifting of converting your code into a database structure. You don't have to think about the database. That's one of the huge benefits of it. Views are the way you take data and merge it with a template and serve a page. So views are it's almost the glue that sticks everything together in Django. Templates are basically HTML with little tags inserted where you can put your data. So it's basically HTML design. That's where you would put your CSS style sheets. That's where you'd put JavaScript if you wanted to add that. So templates are basically the front-facing look and feel of your website. And then the final one that I don't list here is requests, which are the low-level method for how your browser requests data from the server. And the views that we just talked about take that request, interpret the request, process it, merge data and template together, and spit out a result. And that's the page. So you'll learn those 4 pieces. You'll learn models, views, templates, and requests, and how Django works with those things. That's, I think, the most important thing of the class, because once you learn that, you can then extend it in your own way. You can create new models that are not a post or a folder or a tag, and you can extend it and add your own functionality. And that's what I've done for my Backpack course. This is also built in Django, and the structure is very different, but at the core of it, because I understand models, views, templates, and requests, I can build anything now. So at the end of the course, I think you'll be able to set up your own Django development environment on your own using Python, VS Code, which is a coding environment that we'll be using, Git, and Linux. And we will talk about some of these things. You'll be able to build a blog for your own website using these Django and Markdown concepts, the benefits that I think, the reason I'm doing this. But you'll also be able to use the command line to troubleshoot errors, to set it up, to run it. You saw me typing in some commands. There aren't many of them, and you don't have to know them now. And all you have to be is willing to learn them. And you will fail, you will break things, and that's okay. You'll learn how to fix them. That's, I think, the more important skill. And then finally, you'll know how to turn this into your own website, which is, I think, the other major skill that you will learn. So of those things, what were you guys most excited about? What is the key thing that you want to know how to do?
All of
Jackie.
it.
Well, pick one. What skill would you like to know that you haven't had before?
I think just being able to put together my own blog and be able to troubleshoot any of the issues that come up. That seems to be the most exciting to me.
Clement?
Yeah, well, I think if I use Django or if I use Hugo or another platform, it always gives you flexibility to know how other platforms work, and you can apply the strong points of one to another. So I guess that's my intention.
Cool. One thing I would say is a lot of this functionality is based on my time using Hugo. Hugo was the basis for my last personal website, and it worked great until it didn't, until I started having things break. The versioning started getting in the way. Hugo keeps changing, and my site didn't change. I wasn't actively developing the functionality side. And so it eventually broke so that I had to use the old versions of Hugo. Didn't want to invest time in this static site generator that didn't have all the functionality that I wanted. And yet a lot of the key features that I loved about Hugo are baked into what we saw through that walkthrough, which is basically the ability to add search, add tags to templates, separate your markdown from your style sheet. So a lot of that came from my time using and developing things in Hugo. So that. If you are familiar with other static site generators, hopefully you'll see in this process many of your favorite parts and know how to make them yourself too, if you don't.
Absolutely.
So we'll talk briefly about requirements. So who is this course for? If you want to learn by doing, I think this is a good course for you. It's not going to be a lot of theory. We will learn the theory as we need it, and you will not learn the things that we don't do, meaning you're not going to have to learn everything and then just do a small subset. We're going to really focus on what are the key things we have to learn in this lecture to get this objective. And so that means it's a good introductory course, but it's also finite. If you need mentorship to get through this, I think it's also a really good course for you, because I, like you, just learned this recently, and I can interpret what you're learning through the eyes of someone who just barely has a little bit more experience than you. And so I understand the stumbling blocks. And so I understand where you're at, because I didn't understand any of this stuff. And I think that's a benefit. I'll also have a little more, if you miss a course or a class, or you're not there, there's also a bit of accountability for you to catch up and stay on track. So hopefully that will help. It's also for people who have started using Markdown, but are feeling limited by static site generators and want to, expand the functionality, maybe use it for a new purpose, but don't know how. I think that's a good audience. Who is it not for? I will say that being a novice at this particular concept, I'm not going to show you the right way. And if you think there is one right way to do things, you'll probably hear me say things that are wrong, that are not quite efficient enough, that may not use your CPU to its maximum optimization, and that's okay. My background is going to inform the words that I use. I interchange directory and folder. I don't see a difference. And so if you feel like you want to learn the right way, this course isn't necessarily for you. This is a prototyping and kind of a hacking approach towards getting this done. And so we will get it to the point of it works, and then we will move on. And to understand the why and the how and the detail of how to do it best, that's where I certainly can talk to you in office hours about that. But we'll skip through a lot of that stuff because we want to stay focused on the goal. So, yeah. But what I would say is that the structure of this course is really based on my learning experience. And so the progress that you'll go through this is basically the path that I took, only curated and made a little bit more efficient, because I'll help you avoid some of the same pitfalls I had. So prerequisites, what do you need to have? Nothing. You don't have to know anything, but it would be nice for you to be comfortable with Python. If you have never coded in Python before, that's okay, but I won't spend a lot of time actually delving into the basics of it. So I will recommend some external tutorials that can help you if you're really new to it. At the same time, Python is really easy to learn, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue. We'll learn what we need to learn as we go through it. Please stop me if I skip over things, because I am an expert in Python. And that's one of my maybe blind spots, which is going to be, I don't know what you don't know. And so that's going to be a point where, especially for you guys, if you haven't done Python before, stop me. Ask, what am I doing? What's the point of this? What is the structure that you see me typing? It's nice if you would be open to using the command line. We're going to be running Linux, whether you like it or not, or know that you are or not, you're going to be using it. And so that means you're going to be learning a subset of commands that will help you in future things. Even if you don't know them now, you don't have to now, but it's nice that you're open to trying. So we'll learn as we go. And then again, with Linux itself, if you've used it before or are open to learning it, even if you have a Windows machine or Mac, the command line experience is going to be tailored so that all of our commands that are in the lectures are basically Linux commands. And that's okay if you're using a Mac, you can still enter Linux commands in a Mac, because guess what? It's basically the same thing. So, finally, Git, which I don't expect you would have heard before. Git is a version control software, but it's also what GitHub is based off of, which is a software sharing site. And so what you saw today with me marching through the different versions of my code was me checking out different branches of a Git repository. And so if you appreciated the fact that I could move and change versions really quickly, you've already started to appreciate what Git is and how it might be useful for you. For you, it's really good to save your code occasionally so that when something breaks, you can go back to the last time that it worked. And so for most software development cycles, Git is an integral part of it. And we will be using it, even though I won't touch on it too much, and you don't have to. But just know that we're going to be touching on it. It's also built into VS Code, so you don't have to install anything separate. And finally, I guess what I'm saying is I will be following along. If there's typing involved, I'll be typing as well. And I'll be explaining what I'm doing as we go. Are you guys still there?
Yeah.
Okay, Daphne, I think your video froze, but that's okay. Oh, there she is. So then, briefly, what's your background with some of those things that I just mentioned with Python, Linux, command line, Git, and what operating system? We already mentioned operating system, but what's your level of concern here?
With well, I've been using Linux for a decade, and the truth is I know the commands I need. When I need to do something extra, I look it up and use it and forget it because it's so vast.
Yep.
Python, I know the basic commands. If I go with it, I would never say I can do a script from scratch. Yeah, and I use Debian Linux.
That'll be just fine. Daphne.
Okay, so I, as you know, have a Mac because I am okay with the plug and play universe. Yeah. So I have no experience coding in Python, and it's been 20 years since I operated on a computer with the Linux operating system. So I have my new iPhone, which is part of this universe of being trapped and not being able to change anything. And I'm comfortable with that.
That's okay. You can change it, and we will show you how. So not a problem. And the terminal, the command line, is already installed on your computer, and we'll be adding a couple software packages so that your experience is the same as ours, and then the same commands will work. So it shouldn't be a big issue. I just don't have a Mac in front of me, so I can't necessarily always give you the exact right command without. We have to check it first. So that'll be office hours time, I would say. Okay. What do you not need to know? As we mentioned, I'm going to be showing you how to deploy your website on an external server using Docker. You don't need to know Docker because Docker is basically this virtualization paradigm and a piece of software as well that allows you to basically write all of the structure and the configuration in a file, and I'll share that file with you. So you don't need to know it much yourself other than a very small handful of commands to get it started, stopped, and I'll explain each of the lines in the Docker compose file that we're going to be writing. So you don't need to know it that well, and you don't need to concern yourself with it, but it'd be nice to, as we go through it, understand the basics of what it is and why we're doing it that way. You don't need to understand databases. I don't understand databases. I do a little bit, but I haven't, like Daphne, written any database SQL command in 20 years. And I picked Django so that I wouldn't have to. And so that's one of these superpowers of Django, is that it separates you from the need to write low-level database commands, which is also a big pitfall for website development because people who are novices shouldn't be necessarily diving in headfirst to the world of database management. So you can stay at arm's length from that. You also don't need to know the hows or whys of Markdown processing or rendering. I have actually created 1 or 2 packages and processing commands so that a lot of the hard work of converting very specific stylistic things that I was missing from Hugo or MKDocs or Pandoc. And I've actually done the hard work of creating a processor for those specific things so that your experience writing on your blog will be the same as it was writing for Hugo, writing for MKDocs, writing for these other static site generators. The default out-of-the-box Markdown package in Python just doesn't have all of those extensions, and so I made them. And so you don't have to know those things. I'm happy to go into it with you if you want, but we won't be focusing on it because I've done it, and it's done, and it's packaged, and you can just download it. And so it should be transparent to you. In terms of equipment, you need the computer that you're running right now. That's all you need, because if it's able to run Google Meet or do a video chat, then you have more than enough RAM and hard drive space to be able to do what we're going to be doing. So that's fine. I recommend if you stick with it through the end of the course, that you invest in a $5 a month, no frills, a virtual private server, so that you can test out this final production push where you actually move what you've developed onto an external website hosted externally on the internet. And that keeps your stuff a little bit safer, because only that website could ever be hacked, not your stuff too. You don't have to, but it gives you a lot of experience in kind of a new topic to most people taking this course. And also you would need to pair that with a registered domain name like danaukus.com. You need to buy that, and that's a yearly renewal. And then you need the server to host your site on. Those are the two external costs that I would expect to get the most out of the course. And then we're just almost done. So we're going to wrap it up very soon. In terms of other minutiae, for now, you can email me at danaukus@danaukus.com. And I do plan on rolling out a message board for the course and for individual lectures very soon. So as I migrate to that, I'll let you guys know that we should be using the message board. I will still get notifications through email when someone posts something, but it also means that when I answer, everybody will see the response, and that will just keep down the communication traffic and keep things a little more efficient. It'll also be a central point for all of you who are taking the course synchronously and asynchronously to stay in touch with each other. And so I think it'll be a really nice feature when it rolls out. But for now, just email me. Office hours, today is Wednesday, actually. I would say the normal time for this course is Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. And I don't think that everybody can make it synchronously at that same time. So I'm happy to offer office hours at 8 a.m. on Wednesdays to catch as many people as I can kind of in a different time. A lot of people are working, and so kind of the end of the day or the beginning of the day seems to catch the Venn diagrams of different groups of people. So that's what I've proposed. I will offer it starting next week. But if I get feedback that no one can come, or if no one comes, I can change that too. Finally, there is no grading. You cannot get a B in this course, but I will be rolling out assessment functionality, and it may not even be related to this course, but I would love to get some feedback on it as I do. Again, you guys are my beta testers, and I want to make sure that what I'm producing has value and that you guys enjoy it. So I'll share some things later, and probably in the later part of this course for your feedback. And then finally, I would say, your participation in this is completely optional and voluntary, and I appreciate it so much. And so this course is going to be better because of your active responses in the video, as well as your feedback that you give me offline towards how to make the course and the site and the function of everything better as I design all these things from scratch in Django. So please come as much as you can. I really need your feedback, but I also recognize that you can't come all the time. So I am going to offer these recorded lectures to you guys so that you can also at least watch them asynchronously. And I'll try and post them as soon as I can after the session ends. So there will be a free version of the video on YouTube, and then there will be a kind of a paywalled version. The full meeting, the full class will be available on the site. So expect an hour or so delay at least. I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, again, there's no fee for this course. I'm providing it to you guys in exchange for your feedback and participation and responses here. But I may also try to integrate a payment processing later. And so if you're willing to try just a demo payment, it'd be great for me to just make sure that it's working, because apparently my email registration validation is not. So it'd be very useful to make sure that it's working with you guys before I push this feature out to other people. So I think that's it. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to stop the recording now, and we can hang up after this. Hi, this is Dan Aukus, and you have reached the end of the first lecture in my newest course series called Dynamic Site Generation with Markdown and Django. If you liked this course preview and would like to enroll in the full course, please visit the site at backpack.danaukus.com. The full connection information can be seen in the show notes below. Thank you so much for watching.